A good time? Are you having a good time? Are you learning a lot? Are you going to use and apply some of these things? I sure hope so. All right, have a seat. Yeah, thank you so much for your support on the book too. It's so funny. It's such a natural thing for me to say when people say, "Oh, Harv, you did so killer on the book." And first of all, I don't go, "Did?" Hello, this is an alive situation in progress. And secondly, they all want to know. Whenever I'm asked, "How did you do that?" I always say, "Well, if you had the team that I did, it's pretty easy." Good or good? And who's the team? You are. Thank you. So thank you so much for that. And by the way, if you have books already, give them out or if you haven't got any more books, get more and give them out. I'm in utter shock, literal shock, at every night when I'm on stage somewhere and I'm autographing books. When people come up to me and tell me what's happened for them, even before they've even gone to the 3-day Millionaire Mind Intensive, just from the book, I'm blown away myself. And, you know, I go, just from reading that? Well, yeah, reading it, and I just never thought of it that way, and I did a couple of the practices and this, and I go, yeah, oh, it's unbelievable. So make sure you do your mission. A little part of that is helping other people. Yes or yes? And introducing them to the book and let them read for themselves. I mean, if you can pick up just one piece in there, it can make a massive difference. Have you experienced that? Yeah. Yes or yes? Okay, thank you. All right. One of the things, my favorite things to do at some of our millionaire schools is to really for you to get a chance to recognize how rich people think. And, you know, I'm all about that. I'm all about the inner game of money and success. And very often, most rich people don't get interviewed on that portion. They get interviewed on what's their current situation as far as, you know, their project and this and that. But they never get interviewed on what's really gone on for them and how they thought in such a way that created such success. Does that make sense to you? And the first step to action, what's the source of all action? Your thoughts. Your what? Your thoughts, your feelings, your actions. That's your blueprint. That leads to your what? Results. Thank you. All right. So I want to bring some gentlemen on here, and I just noticed that they're all gentlemen. I apologize. Hey, I had to say something. When and if we always attempt to get females, but I'll tell you what right now, we're not going to get a female because she's female. Get it? Not going to get a female because she's female. Always looking, always attempting. But if there's a choice, we're going to take the best person that at least we know. So if you have amazing women who you believe can fit on our stage, we are completely open to that. Because you know what? The truth is they're far and few between. Just the way it is. So I'm hoping that someday it's you gals that become the ones that are up here. Yes? All right. Okay, especially when it comes to investments and money, just the way it is, you know. And other things, you know, it's the other way around, isn't it? Right. All right. So we're going to do a little panel up here. We call this the Millionaire Panel or the Multimillionaire Panel. And let's get our guys up here. They don't know that they're contestants, but let's get no, I'm kidding. Yeah, come on up here, guys. So have a seat. We're going to share. So I'm going to thank you for that. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And if you want, you can applaud for those guys too. No, it's okay. It's all right. It's all right. So we don't have to applaud again here. Just want to introduce them again. We got Rick Rule. We got Greg Hasbret. We've got Keith Cunningham. Here's a gentleman that you haven't met yet. His name is Brent Todd, and you will. Scott Cousins, and of course, Sandy Botkin. Good or good? Right. And by the way, it's not like, you know, we said, it's kind of like we pick these people based on the one criteria is A, that they're training you, but B, is that they've got to be rich. And because there's a lot of people who do training that aren't rich. True or true? Okay, but these guys are, or they wouldn't be up here. All right. So, guys, this is a little bit less formal than you might be used to. So you can take your jackets, shirts off, and things like that. It's all right. Anyways, we're gonna when it gets to you, Brent, then you give a little bit of an extra 30 seconds just to let them know who you are, because Brent will be talking to you tomorrow night a little bit, later in the day. All right. So I've got a bit of a fan back here that's just blowing my head off. That's all right. You know, guys, a lot of you don't know this, but we deal, our primary foundation of what we do is the inner game of money. And that's where we start with everybody, and that is your money blueprint, how you were conditioned and programmed around money and success primarily. And a lot of that has to do with your past, especially when you were young. It has to do with what you heard about money and wealth. It has to do with what you modeled from your parents around money and wealth and management and things like that. And your family situation as you were growing up, or any specific incidents. So I'm going to ask each of you and we're going to time it because we don't want to be going over here. So I'm going to keep you down to 2 minutes apiece. And the question is, tell us where you lived and what was your family situation around money when you were growing up. In other words, what'd you hear around money and what'd you model around money? And how might have this affected your drive to succeed? All right? So we'll share microphones, and we'll start with Rick over here, and hopefully you understand the question. If you don't, then just do your best.
No, I understand the question personally. I was raised by a single mother, school teacher, no father. In terms of money, we didn't have any. I came from a family on both sides that was fairly well-to-do, so I had the advantage of knowing that money was obtainable. We just didn't have any. Thrift was important, because it is if you don't have any. And coming from a family that had some, but when you're part of the family that doesn't have any, it gives you maybe more incentive to succeed. So I think the upbringing, particularly being brought up by a highly intelligent single mother, there was a lot of motivation early on and an awful lot of support and education.
Excellent. Good. We'll hold off on the end. We'll get the clapping at the end of each one. Great. That's super. So also, I want you guys to make notes on the key phrases or key words or key lessons you can get out of each answer. All right? That's your job. What's your job? To make what? Mates, on the what? The key lessons. The key what? Lessons that you can get out of each answer. And we're going to take them up after. Go ahead.
I'm Greg Habstrid, which most of you hopefully know by now. I was born and raised in Calgary, Alberta, and my memories of being young and learning about money, I was raised in a middle-class family in Calgary. My dad was an accountant and was with the city of Calgary for 30-some years. And so I grew up with the concept that it's a really good strategy to go to school, get good grades, get a good job, retire with a pension, because it worked for him, so it'll work for me. And fairly young, I recognized that probably wasn't going to be the path that I would take, because I can remember a lot of the phrases of money doesn't grow on trees and we can't afford that, and a lot of the traditional things that people are born with or grow up with. And I can remember specifically some of the pain associated in junior high. It would have been, when I was 12, 13, 14, and peer pressure starts to build. And I went to school at a school that was close to a lot of really wealthy areas, and all the kids, and not all, the perception then is all the kids do, but not all the kids have the labels, the expensive clothes. And I can remember the pain associated with that, not being able to go to school with that kind of stuff. My parents probably could have afforded it, but they just chose not to. And in hindsight, it's been interesting, because I've taken a very different approach with mine. So I think my perspective from the Money Blueprint is I'm one of those ones that kind of went the opposite to some degree. But the thing that I did learn from them was integrity. That was ingrained in me, and that's what probably the most powerful thing I remember from childhood.
Excellent. Thank you. Next.
Hello. Oh, good. I'm Keith Cunningham. I grew up in Houston, Texas. At a very, very early age, I remember my parents talking about how difficult it was to afford certain things. We had a very, middle class family. My dad worked for AT&T, retired from AT&T after 30-something years. Very similar situation to Greg's family. My parents would continually talk about ruining the day that they didn't make an investment. They'd say, oh gosh, I remember we could have bought that at such and such a time. And look how much money we could have made if we only would have done that. I started a business when I was 11 years old. I delivered eggs to our neighbors. And my dad, and I've actually made a lot of money for an 11 or 12-year-old kid, and my dad gave me, when I was 12 years old, he gave me a book, and it was a ledger that showed, on the inside, it showed here's how much money came in and here's where the money went. And on the outside, there was a picture of a three-masted ship, 18th century schooner, three-masted ship. And the ship was listing. It looked like it was about to sink. And underneath the picture was a caption. And the caption said, "Small leaks sink a great ship, Benjamin Franklin." And and that has stuck with me over the years. In fact, I'm just finishing a book, and that is going to be in the book, this story about this three-masted ship. And so I learned at a very early age, look, I mean, you got to pay attention to the little things. The little things are the things that'll sink the boat, and so that was one of the primary messages I got is a blueprint.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, Brent.
Yeah, hi, I'm Brent Todd. You haven't had a chance to get to know me yet. I'm a broker out of Vancouver, Canada, and I manage a good chunk of the money for both WBIC and FIC. So we'll be talking about the strategies that we use for those clubs tomorrow. So I hope you're all in attendance tomorrow. I grew up in I'll say a middle-class background, but it was a struggle. My dad really worked for the government all his life. He was a colonel in the Army. He came out of that, so he got a government job, and it wasn't a great salary, but my dad was a very good at managing the money, so he was able to get us into maybe a neighborhood that we wouldn't have got into otherwise based on that salary. But in listening to Greg talk about peer pressure, I know what he's talking about, because I was in an area that other people had money, and they did have the nice clothes and the nice bikes and the cars, and my family obviously couldn't afford that. We had 5 kids. I was one of 5 kids. My dad's working for a government salary. So I learned very early that if I wanted anything in life, I was going to have to work for it myself. So, I mean, I had my, paper route at grade 5, and from there I had a full-time job in the summer when I was in grade 9, and I was working up north on the drill rigs that basically put myself through college. So, I mean, that background really shaped my life, because I learned very early on that if I wanted something, I was going to have to do it myself.
Great, next.
Scott Cousins. I was born in Montreal and actually ended up moving about 12 times during my growing up years. And my father was an executive. We were an upper middle class family. He was an executive with Chrysler Canada in Canada. And it was in junior high, I guess I was in grade 7, when he left this position where he'd been at for 20 years. I'll never forget sitting at the kitchen table, and he looked at my sister and I and my mother and said, well, for the first time in his life, your father is unemployed. And he left the company for certain reasons, and within moments was picked up, and the next portion of his life began. But my father was never, he was always willing to take a risk. He's an entrepreneur by nature, although he had a long-term senior executive job. One of the things he instilled in me at a very young age was, to eat, you must work. And I had my first paper route when I was in grade 5, and have worked ever since. Had a great childhood, but there was a work component to it that, my boys, it's a slightly different world than it used to be, and it's harder for young kids to get work. but I think the instilling the work ethic and a willingness to take risk was something that stuck with me. And also, two other quick things. One is 10% of everything I ever earned starting from day one was set aside for somebody other than me. And I think that's, for my life at least, that's been something that's been important. And so that song this morning of you have to give before you get, or something along that lines, I think it's a powerful, it's a powerful truism.
Excellent, thank you.
Hi all, I'm Sandy Botkin. I guess I grew up in Baldwin, New York. My dad was a principal, my mom was a school teacher, so education always was emphasized in our household. But the thing that made real changes in my life, there's a couple things I think if you think to everyone's life, what changed, what's like a paradigm shift, what really affects us. And one of the things that really affected me was my mom had a lot of junk in the house, and I guess I've learned that the amount of junk always rises to the level of your house. No matter how big a house it is, they load it with junk. Well, my mom put an ad in the paper, and I to this day, I never realized how brilliant that ad was, and I learned a lot about ad copy from her, but the ad said, "House full of strange old things." We had every crazy person coming to that house. We must have had 500 people in our house. My grandmother was afraid she'd be sold. Well, my parents looked at each other and said, "Holy cow, there's something going on here." And they decided to sell antiques. And they became the largest antique dealers in North America. Well, I asked my parents, what is it that made you so successful? And because I became very entrepreneurial. I saw their lifestyle and I said, heck, I don't want a job, I want this. And I did all kinds of things like selling newspapers as kids, or delivering newspapers and selling sodas at the local yacht club and doing all kinds of stuff. And my father said to me, "You want to become successful, Sandy? I'm going to give you a real secret of why our business stands out over anybody else's." And his answer was, no matter what we do in our antique business, we always try to have what we call constant and never-ending improvement. You either improve or you die. It's that simple. If you have to start a business, always try and make it better. And to this day, when I do seminar business, you don't realize when I deliver my programs, but my program is a result of 20 years of evolution. I would call up students when I get evaluations, and I wouldn't call up the ones who liked me. I called up the ones who didn't like me. And I would ask them, what didn't you like? What did you fear? What could I do better? And as a result of 20 years of evolution, that's how I made my business the way it is. So I would say that's certainly one of the major things that affected me.
Excellent. Hey, give him a round of applause. Thank you. Great. Thanks, guys. So are you writing down lessons? Because I've got about 7 or 8 right there. So hopefully you've got that, because these are important things. Like, let me ask you a question. If you could take a really rich person to lunch, would you? Well, you got 7 with you right now, so or 6 at this point in time, and literally, what comes out of their mouth should be going not only into your brain but locked in there. Yes or yes? All right. Let's ask another question here, and that is, some of you alluded to it a little bit, but what do you believe is the number one reason for your success, and why do you believe that? And it could also include personal characteristics or traits. Whatever you feel is, but just keep it to one thing. We'll give you 1 minute. So the number one reason, if you could boil it right down, there's several we know, but the one most important reason that's most important for your success as to why you become successful. And we'll start right over here. Yeah, we'll start with Greg this time.
One single thing, okay. I think for me personally, the ability to see opportunities in things that aren't readily obvious is probably what I would have to say. Most of the businesses and the growth and the success that I've had has been the result of trying to do something a little bit differently, or seeing how something was being done and thinking, I think there's a way you can improve that. And I've also done that within my businesses. I started out as 10 or 12 years ago, the company that I sold a few years ago, it started as a software development company and ended up an audio video production firm going into the web. And I'm not sure how we made that transfer, but along the way, it was recognizing opportunities, doors opening, and at the same time, the constant struggle of avoiding the entrepreneur dilemma of the shiny metal object syndrome, which is what I called every time you chase something different every single week. But I think I've been successful enough that I've chased the right shiny objects and avoided the ones that probably wouldn't have led me down the right path. So that's a hard question, Harv.
Well, you did well. Okay, next, thanks.
My wife.
Is she here?
She's here, isn't she?
She is here.
No kidding.
Where is Sandy? She's someplace back there.
Yeah.
Now, I think...
Oh, there she is. She's over there.
There she is, way over there.
Give us a wave over there.
I think it really is true that having somebody that will help hold you to a higher standard than what you're willing to do yourself. And to me, it's the singularly most powerful, I'll tear up talking about it, it's the singularly most powerful force in my life, bar none. I've been very fortunate in my life to have some great mentors. I started to say mentors a minute ago because I got hired by a couple guys right out of school who were multi, hundreds of millions of dollars. And I became their assistant. And having them in my life, having people around me in my life that are smarter than I am, that will teach me, that will hold me to a higher standard. And at this point in my life, it is Sandy. So that's my answer.
Excellent, thanks. Yeah.
Harv, last time I was up here, I had to follow Koopman, and now you got me beside Keith here. Great answer. As far as my personal success goes, definitely I would have to say it's focus, and more than just focus, it's focus on the area of the business that I love, which for me is pure research. So my business went to the next level when I truly asked myself, what in my business do I love? And it turned out it was research. So I started hiring staff to basically take care of all the areas that I didn't really love. And that was like paperwork. And in my business, you know, we're just choked with paperwork. We deal with people's money. And trust me, it doesn't make my clients any money by dealing with paperwork. So when I truly started focusing on what I loved, my business took off. And yeah, that's basically it.
Great, good answer, yes.
Surrounding myself with brilliant people that are a lot smarter than I am. I think for anybody, one of the best skills that we can develop is being self-critical, understanding really what you're good at, focusing on that, and bringing people around you that can fill in the gaps and do everything else. I think that's one thing that I'm good at. I know what I'm good at. I don't try and do everything else. I have some absolutely brilliant partners that fill in the gaps, and together we make a great team. The concept of a self-made man or a self-made woman, I think, is garbage. You know, nothing of significance is created in the world outside of, you know, a team, and there's always people that have input that aren't necessarily right up here on the stage, but they're in behind you, and without them, you're only a shadow of what you appear.
Right, well, that's one of the things we talk about a lot in our programs, isn't it? That you can make it on your own, but not very high, not very big, you know, and not very fun necessarily, yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Sid.
Boy, somebody beat me when I was going to say my wife. That was terrific. Actually, I think I already mentioned it. My real focus in life, and I really instill this in my kids, is constant, never-ending improvement. It never stops. Whatever I'm doing, I always try to watch other people. I watch other speakers, and I don't necessarily listen to what they're saying per se as the topic, but I watch what they're doing, how they're doing it. If I see someone in business, I ask myself, what are they doing that makes them successful and why? I'm always analyzing things to be better. And I say this to my kids, good enough to me is never good enough.
Excellent, thank you. Hey, give me a round of applause. Oh, yeah, hold on. We changed the order, so one more here. Sorry, I apologize for that. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to repeat some of what was already said. The thing that's really helped me has been that I absolutely love what I do. I honestly would probably do this for free if it didn't pay so well. I get up in the morning, I can't wait to get to work. When I go on vacation, I like my vacation, I like all that kind of stuff, but eventually I say, I want to do something. I want to get back to work. I'm research-oriented as well. And I think the other thing that happens, and it happens easily if you absolutely love what you do, is that you're able to create value. It's not a job, it's a mission. The way you make money is by creating value for people. In financial services, which is what I do, it's a no-brainer. If you make rich people richer, you're gonna get rich. Rich people are willing to pay you a lot to make them richer. If you love what you do, if you can't help but do it, you can't help but create value. And you can't get rich if you don't create value. So figure out something that you do so well that you're gonna get ahead naturally, because the person that you're competing with has a job and you have a life. And you can't miss. You can't miss.
Excellent. Before we do that, I want to add to that. One of the things, again, I've been on a bit of a tour lately, and I don't know, lately I've been ragging on people a lot more. I don't know if it's my stage of life or whatever, but, they just got to get it. And, I just get in their face. I have a tendency to do that, yes? And especially the newbies, the ones who've never met me before, and the ones that are really quiet and spiritual, oh my God, I just kind of lace right into them so bad. And so, because, I think they need shock therapy is what they need, right? That's what I think, because they're just so lottie-dottie that for a lot of them, they're broke. So what do they need? The lottie-dottie hasn't made them rich. So they need some shock therapy to have some energy that looks like this. Right? Along with this, that puts them a nice full person, right? Anyways, but what I've been saying to them is that raise your hand if you're not doing well financially. And then I go, you're broke because you're not helping people. I don't care what you say, and I don't care what you think. Obviously, you're not helping a heck of a lot of people. It's very simple. You get paid for helping people. You're a problem solver. If you're broke, you're not solving a heck of a lot of problems for many people, at least in the way they want to receive it. Does that make any sense at all? And they just are in shock. And they're like, I get people running to the bathroom, throwing up, all kinds of stuff. Oh my God, you said I wasn't helping people, but I do help people. Yeah, how? Well, I do aromatherapy and I help. How many customers do you have a week? Well, I help like 4 people a week. Well, how about 400? Is that gonna work for you? They go, well, how would I do that? Well, so if you help 4 people, you're gonna get paid for helping 4 people. Hello? That's the way it works, right? So as I've said to many other people, I want everyone's homework to be right now is to help 10 times the number of people you're helping right now. Solve problems for 10 times the number. If you have 100 people in your business that you're helping 100 customers, make it 1,000 as quickly as possible. That's what you get paid for, solving problems for people. Does that make sense? All right, give these guys a big round of applause. Okay, one of the things that happens for many people is we run across obstacles. Yes? Raise your hand if that's ever happened to you. All right. I'm going to ask each one of our wonderful panelists is, what was your biggest financial disappointment or disaster, and what did you learn from it, and how did you turn it around? And really, what was the thinking behind it, okay? So a disaster of sorts, especially financially, a disappointment or disaster, what'd you learn from it, and how did you turn that around, because you obviously did? And again, what was the thinking behind that? What happens when an obstacle comes around? What's the thought process, and how did you turn it around? All right, we're going to start right over here with Keith this time, right? Yeah, I know. Well, we'll come back to you. Don't worry.
In the 1980s, I was a very, very aggressive real estate developer. I'd already made a ton of money in cable television, made a ton more in real estate in Texas. And anybody who remembers back to that time will remember a little poem that I heard one time that goes, money talks, I can't deny. I heard it once, it said goodbye. And I spent 4 years, I had about $200 million of personal liability debt, and I'd started a real estate company about 4 years prior to that. And I had made a lot of money, and then a lot of things happened, including my own hubris, and I wound up losing all my money. And so for 4 years, I was spent every day, all day long, negotiating with the federal government because all my banks had failed. I was negotiating with the federal government to repay somehow $200 million.
I said a big financial disaster. Okay, go ahead. We'll take this one for now. Yeah,
I did.
else.
I repaid it. I gave them back their property and a ton of cash, and I negotiated my way out of it. In 1990, my accountants came to me and told me that first of all, they said congratulations. Secondly, they said that I had created a $9 million tax liability to the IRS for forgiveness of debt. And I said, what's my options? And they said, pay it or go broke. And so February the 12th, I'll never forget this day, in 1991, I declared personal bankruptcy. And it was the singularly most devastating day of my life, primarily because I had my net worth and my self-worth entwined, which is another way of saying that who I was on the inside was no longer about who I was, but instead it had everything to do with what I had and what I did. And so I took a sabbatical. That's how I got out of it. I took an 18-month sabbatical. I did not know how long it was going to last. I studied the world's religions. I read 200 books on philosophy, all the ologies, philosophy, theology, psychology. And ultimately, the way I describe this, and I know I'm going 1 second long, but if I can just tell this last little story. The way I describe this time period is it's like being on a basketball court at halftime, and I'm jogging off the court, and I glance back up at the scoreboard as I'm heading to the locker room, and the score says it's 87-3. The other guy's winning. And so as I'm in the locker room at halftime, I kept asking myself the question, how am I going to win this game? And it turns out that was the wrong question. The question I began asking, and it's the question that really changed my life and allowed me to emerge from this dark hole that I was in. The question is not how can I win the game? The question is how will I play the second half? And the instant I changed the question, then suddenly my life started working. I rebuilt my net worth. It doesn't take long once you know how to do it. It took me 2.5 years, and I had more money coming at that point than I did going into bankruptcy. And I've learned that this thing we call failure is not falling down, but it's rather not getting back up. And that was one of the key things that kept coming to me, is that I'm not what I do. And you're not what you do. We are who we are, and the doingness has nothing to do with it. So that's my disaster.
Very good. Thank you. That was excellent.
Well, I think mine's going to pale in comparison to Keith's.
You know what? Your self-worth can't be tied to your panel worth. We need to teach
Fair
Brent
enough.
that.
Fair
Okay?
enough.
Who you are is not this panel, Brent. You got to get that.
Thank goodness
You're
for
much
that.
more than that.
A recent obstacle, it was a very large obstacle, was about a year and a bit ago. After being at a firm for 19 years, I decided to move firms. Now, when you're moving firms, you've got to take all your clients with you, and you've got to kind of do it covertly. And so I'm in the process of moving somewhere in the neighborhood of 400 or 500 clients over to the new firm. And about, I would say, maybe 80 to 90 of them were somewhat new clients that had been with me for a year, maybe people that had come through these doors. And literally, I think 20 days before the actual move, before I could spring it on people and let them know that they would have to follow me to another firm, one of the companies that we'd invested in, and we invest in micro cap stocks, there is risk, went bankrupt. And, you know, that wasn't so difficult to explain to the sort of 300 or 400 people that had been with me for a long time. But it was very difficult to explain to these 50 people that were affected, that were new clients, and to garner their trust and come with me despite, you know, taking a real personal hit to their portfolios, and that I would do everything I could in my power to get them where they wanted to be. And so, to a man, they all came, and that was pretty amazing. And, you know, to a man, I know every one of those people and every one of those names, and I mark them off as I get them to where they wanted to be. And there's still a few left, and I know who they are, and they'll get there. But that was very difficult, and I just really was honored in the trust that they'd shown me.
Excellent, great. That's it. Thank you. We'll do the applause after the whole thing.
In Rick's presentation earlier this afternoon, he talked about don't mistake a bull market for brilliance. I made that mistake. At what was the top of the first cycle that I was really a significant investor in, I decided that I would buy a home with a significant amount of leverage, and that the tax that I was going to owe for selling the stock to buy the home, that I would put off making allocation for that tax till sometime later in the tax year, closer to when the bill was due. Again, because I was brilliant, you understand, and I've got it all planned and everything's going to work out. Well, it didn't. In the course of about 8 months, my portfolio was worth 1/10 of what it had been. I never made provision for the tax that was owing, and ended up having to sell my home, which was a big thing for me at the time, and it was more of an emotional and more of a profile thing than anything else. But I had two options. The home was in my wife's name. I had the option of telling Revenue Canada, listen, come on down, have my portfolio, do what you can, you're only gonna get a small percentage of it, but I don't own the home. Or to exhibit what I was raised to do and what I wanted to show to my boys, and I wanted to show them some integrity. And the decision was sell the house, pay the tax bill, and get on with it. And it was a difficult decision, but I think that the answer to one of the earlier questions about the most important thing in your life, for me, it's also my wife and my family, but my wife in particular, who had no time during this period of time of humbling experience for myself, did she ever sit back and go, this is good for you. She was entirely supportive. She said, no problem. We've done with less before. We can do with less again. And having people in your life that support you in the good times, but more importantly in the bad times, is critical. And I think taking a level of integrity and making what was a difficult decision at the time, my boys were old enough to recognize, to take responsibility for your mistakes, and don't look for a way, a cheap way out.
Excellent, thank you. We'll do all the clapping after. We'll do it 6 times as big clapping, okay? Just relax, take it easy. All right, go ahead. I know it.
Well, I guess this one's an easy one. I was, as a seminar provider, I always show up the night before the seminar, and I was in Seattle, and I had a seminar going on 2 days later in Anchorage, so I had plenty of time. Just so happens that particular night, you probably read about the Alaskan volcano going off. What that presented a problem to me, because when a volcano goes off, I didn't know at the time, it spews forth these gases that destroy plane engines. So every flight the day before the seminar was canceling. Every flight. And I figured there's all these flights from Seattle. How many can cancel? Every one. Well, it turns out that there was, and I, as a seminar provider, I can't speak for what you do, but I have to show up. We have contracts with hotels. We have people who pay for seminars. You just can't not show up. What do? I was willing to take a dog sled. I was willing to swim, whatever I had to do. Well, there was one flight that was going to Fairbanks, which is about 200 miles away. And I contacted my staff, and they said, "Well, we'll get you a pilot. Go to Fairbanks. Maybe you can rent Fairbanks, and maybe you can rent a car." So I did fly to Fairbanks. Every car was taken, every one. Somebody else had that idea. They then got me this Bush pilot, and I said, "Great." So I came out, and I saw this beautiful plane, and I said, "Oh, we're going in that?" He goes, "No, we're going in that one." That plane was no bigger than half the stage. It was me, the pilot, and this much more room. And at that point, I was getting a little worried because I said, "Well, you have a transponder, right? I was told you have a transponder." He says, "Sure we do." Well, we got up and about 50 miles away. He says, "By the way, the transponder doesn't work once you're more than 50 miles from an airport. But I want to warn you, if we smell gas, I'm turning around because that can destroy the engines." Then he says, "Oh, by the way, we're also going through Windy Pass." Windy Pass? Well, Windy Pass is you go in there and the thing, oh, by the way, I was told it never gets dark in Alaska. Don't worry. Bull. I'm getting the Windy Pass. It's pitch dark. I barely see the mountains. The plane is going like this, and they're going through this pass. So meanwhile, we're getting to we're finally coming into the airport. He smells gas, and I threaten to have a revolt if this guy turns around at that point. I get in. My staff picks me up. I drive to the hotel. I get in at 5 a.m. in the morning. I'm up at 7:30 to do the seminar. I guess what I learned from that, is, which is carried through the rest of my life, is that it is not our successes that make us stronger, but it's the way we handle adversity that determines who we are.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, perfect. Got it yet? You ready?
Yeah, my story is very much like Keith's. You may recall my discussion earlier today when I said in cyclical businesses you're either a contrarian or a victim. I came by that wisdom honestly. I was a victim. In the early part of my career in the 70s in the oil and gas business, I was a very successful young guy from fairly humble beginnings, and I, in fact, confused a bull market with brains. I thought that the move in oil from $3 a barrel to $30 a barrel was really attendant on my success. And I carried a $30 pro forma with the attendant leverage into a $12 world. The little ditty that I told you, when your outgo exceeds your income, your upkeep becomes your downfall, is what I experienced. I got to the point where in early 1992, my investment goal was to get back to broke. I just wanted to be broke.
Let me just make sure I get a note on that.
Yeah. You said keep it simple.
Way to be broke.
Yeah, just want to get.
Okay.
The point was that in my business, I learned it's very cyclical, and I learned that when things are very bad in the business, it's very, very, very good time to be in the business. And when things get really good in the business, it's gonna get bad. So in the business that I'm in, and this is how I learned it, you are either a contrarian or you are a victim. Mercifully, I got north of broke again. That experience, I am absolutely certain, will keep me from ever being close to broke again.
Excellent. Good job. Yeah, next.
About 5 years ago, I alluded to it before, I sold a company, and one of the things that seems to happen is when you achieve what I think is quick success in terms, you sell a business and you've got a bunch of money, that, and I've heard it several times so far, is that suddenly the hubris or the ego suddenly starts to think it's bigger than the rest of the world. So I started investing in a lot of things that I knew nothing about. And the one in particular, it wasn't the biggest disaster I've had. It definitely wasn't the smallest, but I had, at the time, this was back in March, I sold my company just at the height of the tech bubble, and ended up with a bunch of cash and bought Nortel. And obviously I don't have to tell that story. It's been told too many times. But what I remember about it is that, number one, that I bought some and bought it on margin, and I learned deeply what leverage can do to you when it swings against you. And so I had, it was about $100,000 that I had bought, and I had bought it on the advice of my broker at the time, who it turns out lived up to his name. And he had suggested that, it was 120 and it's at 80, and oh my Lord, it's a buy opportunity, and that old story. So I bought in, it dropped to 60, and I called him, and of course, what did he say? It's coming back up, don't worry, everything's fine. It actually came back up, and it came up to exactly what my buy was a few months earlier. This was in December of 2000. So here I am back even, and said to him, what do you think I should do? And well, it's back. I mean, it's going back to 150, and again, their targets were 180. Okay, what am I know? I don't know. You're speaking Japanese. That sounds fine to me. And the long story short is, I got margined out at about $12. And so what I learned in that experience was, it sucks to lose money. That's really, that's one of the lessons I learned. But no, really.
That just goes right underneath getting back to broke, right?
I couldn't help that. No, what I learned, and it was, for me, it was a crystallizing moment in my investing world, because it was the time when I realized that, number one, money just allows you to be stupider faster and lose money faster. And also that if I trusted exclusively putting my money in other people's hands, that very quickly they would find ways to lose it for me. That was the attitude that I had at the time. So what it taught me was I had to learn what I was investing in, and I had to understand investing. So it started me down the road of a lot of research and investing psychology and understanding how wealthy people think and how they act, and then also getting great people around me. And I don't have a train wreck like some of the people up here to tell, and I think that's probably because I was lucky enough early to get scared. And one thing I do want to do is give some of that credit, or a lot of that credit, to the gentleman beside me, Keith Cunningham, because Keith is a very good friend of mine, and he's also he's a mentor to me. We spend a lot of time together, and he's coached me on investing, and so I wanted to thank you for that.
All right, hey, let's give them all a big round of applause. Come on. Good job. All right. Okay, well, we're not done yet. Very good, thank you. So the next question I have for you guys is this. If you had to do your life all over again financially, what would you do differently? And keep it to about a minute or so. So if you had to do your life again all over financially, what would you do differently? You can take all the time you wanted to think about this. Okay, let's go. All right, and so we're starting with Brent.
That's it's a really hard one, because the reality is I've learned so much from my mistakes that they always sort of careened me into the right direction, and that was how I made my money. I'm not a genius, so I have to try things out and then sort of learn from them. And I don't know that I do a lot of things differently, because my mistakes really have sent me down the path of my success right now. And the people that invest with me, for sure, they get the benefit of me having already stubbed my toe for them. So I really don't know that I do a lot differently, to be honest.
Okay, great. Next.
I wish I had the ability. I'm, hopefully with a little bit of age and a little bit of track record, you gain a little bit of wisdom. And I'm trying to learn more and more from other people's mistakes. But I'm in a similar situation in that, the times in my life that I look back on when Scott had the opportunity to grow and get better and change things in his life that were just kind of systematic problems that would continue to arise until Scott decided to fix them. Only through the bad decisions and the mistakes did I learn those lessons. I am trying to learn from other people's mistakes more and more because I think there's value in that. But for me, not a dissimilar situation. I don't know that I do a whole lot different. It's been a great ride. It's a lot of fun. I love what I do, and I'm going to make more mistakes and hopefully learn from them.
Excellent.
Boy, that's an easy one. Knowing real estate tripled, I'd buy 100 properties. That's what I would have done. No question about that one. That's one mistake I would make up. I think the second one is when I saw that slide that I showed you, and I only saw that a few years ago, that putting away $4,000 a year for 40 years and just an average performing investment, nothing special, no special investing is worth, after 40 years, was how much? $5.2 million. I would have started investing with an IRA or something as a kid all those years instead of going out and spending it on the dates that I had. That was a mistake. But I think that's probably the only two major things I might do differently. Otherwise, most of what I would probably do again.
Excellent. Bring it up here.
Two things, really. I would have started my own business earlier. Working for other people subjected me and my clients to other people's mistakes. I would have started my own business earlier. And probably more importantly, when I was very young, I was pretty money motivated. And when I stopped working for money and started working for accomplishment, I started making lots of money. Chasing the dollar early on was an enormous mistake. Trying to do the right thing, it was like I opened the floodgates. It was amazing. When I stopped working for money and just started doing what I did better than other people, I started making incredible amounts of that which I had sought earlier. So those would be the two things.
Excellent.
I think I probably would have wanted to start earlier, thinking before I started what I was doing with the end in mind, because I started a lot of things without even knowing where they were going to lead or what I was doing them for. So I started businesses without knowing what it looked like 5 years from now. So for example, my business that I had for several years, I started it and had no idea where it was going to go. And so one of the things I've learned is that you're crazy to start a business because you love what you do and you want to do it forever. I realized, for me at least, that I needed to start a business but also have an exit strategy in mind. Because if I don't have an exit strategy, it's hard to have a target. And if you don't have a target to shoot at, it's pretty tough to hit it. So I would say that would probably be I focus now more on the end in mind.
Great.
What I don't see is what costs me money every single time. And to me, the silent killer has been my assumptions. When I look back at my career over the last 35 years or so of investing and making a fortune, losing a fortune, making another fortune, every single time that I've gotten into trouble, every single time I've lost money, it's always because there's some assumption that I've made that has gotten me into trouble. And so to me, one of the most powerful things I think you can do in terms of dealing with your money is to think, to use your intellect. Money, as you know from the marble game, has nothing to do with emotions. Never has, never will. The other thing that I think that's, I guess, is an adjunct to that is that I think there's a tremendous difference between the skills it takes to make money and the skills it takes to keep money. And I learned that in spades. I've never been afraid to be broke because I'm not afraid to work. But I never want to go back there. I'll be real clear on that. But I also think that there's two completely different skill sets, and unless you master both of them, you're doomed to a yo-yo effect for the rest of your life, where you make it, lose it, make it, lose it. And I don't want to do that again, so I'm busy learning the skills to keep it this time.
Excellent, great. Got everybody? Big round of applause. Okay, another question here. All right, this is an interesting one. We're going to keep it short. Again, a minute maximum. What do you want to be remembered for?
The one I get to go first on. Yeah, thanks a lot. Well, I want to be. What do I want to be remembered for? I want to be remembered for being a good husband and a good father. Period.
Cool. Thank you.
Gee, that's really good. I agree with that. I think what I said to somebody asked me that same question actually about a month ago, and my answer was, I want to be remembered that if I pass away, my family will cry. That's what I want to have happen. I want it to miss me.
Miss you, great.
Do you mind if I add something to my? I'm not.
That's
Are you
illegal.
I'm done.
Sorry, we
You're
can't do that.
I guess for something that's perhaps more valuable in context of this, I want to be remembered from my business life as somebody who empowered other people and created wealth for other people, similar to what Rick was talking about earlier. And there's nothing more exciting to me than when our shareholders do well. You can't believe the crates of oranges, and I'm not a golfer, but I get golf clubs every year from people in Florida that have retired because of how well they've done on certain investments. And that there's no way of valuing that. So that, from a professional standpoint, that's the answer.
Right. I'll take those golf clubs. All right. Hey, whatever, right? At least not one time. Right here.
In terms of business, my business career has been, serendipitous for me, and most of what I want to be remembered for, I think I will be remembered for. What I'm doing in addition to business that is really a passion for me is I'm involved in a microcredit philanthropy. For those of you who don't know what microcredit is, we loan money in the third world. Our chief lending criterion is that the borrower have no collateral, which makes us an odd lender. And we loan money primarily to third world women because we found two things. The women pay the money back, and when they make money, they usually spend it on the family. And we have found, this thing was founded by somebody named Muhammad Yunus. Some of you may have read his book, Give Us Credit. Muhammad Yunus started a microcredit business in Bangladesh in 1973 with $51. And the Grameen Foundation, the Grameen Foundation from $53 has moved 3 million families above poverty, as is defined in those countries. My hope is in my declining years that myself, my customers, can assist people like Muhammad Yunus and take some number, 100 million desperately poor people, loan them money, find non-governmental solutions to real human problems. Don't give them a handout, give them a hand up. Have them start businesses, have them look after their families. In Muslim countries, empower the women so that the female children learn to read. That's how I'd like to be remembered. I'll never lead it because it's already being led, but I'm going to do my damnedest to see it go.
Excellent, thank you.
I definitely picked the wrong chair on that question. I think my answers are pretty simple. In my business professional life, I want to be remembered for changing people's concept and path of when it comes to money and independence. I get so much out of teaching and seeing people's lights turn on when I'm teaching, and that's why I love doing it. So it's like Rick said about talking about adding value. It's a byproduct that you're successful when you add value to the world. But that's what I love about teaching, is seeing somebody's lights turn on and knowing that I had a small part to play in their ship slowly starting to change direction and end up somewhere else on the other side of the world. So, personally, I think I'd like to be remembered. I'd like people to know who I was and think of me, know that I'm my father's son, not because of my last name, but because of who I am. So I'd have to say that.
Excellent, great.
I want to be remembered as a man of integrity. That who I am and what I say are perfectly, and what I do are perfectly congruent. That to me is what integrity is. Integrity to me has nothing to do with morals and ethics. It has everything to do with what I know in my heart of hearts is true for me, and then acting accordingly. And so if I could just have one, which I hope I get to have more, but if I get to just have one, that would be it.
Excellent, great.
Yeah, I was sitting here, and I, before Keith said that, the two words came to me was integrity and honesty. That's how I'd want to be known. And we've talked about wealth creation. I'd also sort of want to be known for someone that took a whole ton of people and got them to where they wanted to be, and in creating wealth, help give them choices. And I see it all the time with people, and it's not all about money, but the money does give them some freedom to make some choices. And a lot of my clients make a lot of good choices, and that's what I'd want to be known for.
Excellent. Yeah. We done with all of them here? Okay. Big round of applause. I guess the big thing that I would say here, and I think most of these guys would agree with that, is that we're not a lot different than you are. Would you say that's, I mean, most of us, especially on this stage here, we don't think, hey, we're here and you're there. At least I don't. I'd love to see you guys here. I'd love to. It pisses me off when you're not, right? That's why I get angry at people. Like, what are you thinking here? Like, let's turn it around. And I don't think you're very far away. I think you guys are a lot closer than you think you might be. I think for all of you might agree with me or not, that it doesn't take that much of this massive difference in your life. It's not going to go, you're not going to go from, orange to purple in one day and everything is just going to take off. It's this process that starts to gain a momentum. Would you guys agree with any of this? It's this little thing that you kind of latch on to. The one little thing that starts to work for you a little bit, that you start to gain some momentum on. And if you don't rein it in, and you allow it to move, and again, I can only speak for myself, and you're willing to step on that gas when that thing starts, you're going to be up here too. Whether you're up here on stage or whether you're just a multimillionaire in your own right, it's not this big shift. It's a little one. You get the right vehicle along with the right knowledge and the right type of thinking and who you are as a person, and you find something that begins to work a little bit, and then you start to expand it. And don't be afraid to allow it to come to fruition organically, and allow it to get big, and get out of the way of it being big, and be smart as it's growing. And there's a saying, I guess a country saying, says, dance with the one who brung you. And what that means is stick with what's working. What most people do as things start to get a little momentum is they cut it off. They somehow, well, maybe I should try this too. And what about that? And you took the little thing that had a shot and you kind of cut it off at its neck again. Is this making sense to anybody here? So I think you're not far away. A lot of you are doing very well. And to go to the next level, again, it's just finding something that you're good at, you love doing, is working just a little bit. And all you need is that it works a little. Just a little. It doesn't have to work massively. Because that's what success skill is all about, is growing something that works into something that serves way more people, and just doing it again and again and again and again for a lot more people. I always say my Speedwell information is that business should be nice and boring. Success should be really boring from the element of the money and the business side of it. I'm not saying you don't enjoy it. I'm just saying don't complicate it. All you have to do is find one thing that works, and then step, keep growing on that. Would you guys agree with any of this at all? Yeah, yeah. All right. So how many of you feel like you aren't that far away? Yes? Give somebody a high five and say you're awesome. All right. So here's what we're going to do. Hey, did you guys enjoy this? Yeah. Very good. Give them a round of applause. Good job.